It is getting ugly with Juan Soto. There's no other way to put it. And the transition is really remarkable because now it's not just like I was talking yesterday. I was on after the game. I was on yesterday morning. I went to the Subway Series Sunday night. I watched the Yankees win the series. And my take was kind of the Yankee pivot off of Juan Soto. There's so many different elements of the Juan Soto story. And a lot of it so far, from the beginning of the signing has been Met fans being able to crow about what it means that Juan Soto is a Met. And how he's changed the dynamic of the city. He's changed the dynamic of the fan bases. He's changed the dynamic of Mets Yankees. He's changed the dynamic of who the Mets are and who the Mets can be moving forward. And it changes the organizations and where they stand. And it was just a sad, pathetic thing from Yankee fans over the last couple of days and really over the entire start of the season and how butthurt the Yankee fan was and how embarrassing the Yankee fans handled themselves at Yankee Stadium. This is the perspective of the Met fan, obviously, and how quickly it has turned, because when you start talking about hustle, when you start talking about the lack of hustle, and you watch this guy, and obviously he is not playing up to his capabilities. He is not hitting with runners in scoring position. And for me, as a Yankee fan, I thought for sure, and I talked about this yesterday, I thought for sure that Juan Soto, despite some struggles, and we could talk about his honest-to-God numbers, and we can get into the actual kind of season he's having, and his OPS is still significantly above 800 and all of that, and I've been talking about that, and I think that's fair, that he's not, despite a slump, he's not been putrid, he's not been awful. I heard Paul talking about all kinds of names like Jason Bay. I was listening to Keith driving in, Bay or Ellsbury. I mean, it's nowhere near that. But the dynamic shift, because now when you start talking about hustle, this is the Met fans now getting on Juan Soto. And we had the stories, obviously, earlier today from Bob Clappish talking about out of shape Juan Soto, talking about some of the Met brass being concerned about his enthusiasm, some of the things that we've all seen. And let's just start there with basic facts. It is a fact, whether you want to admit it or not, and I'm not ready to stand here and tell you some of the nonsense that I've heard. I don't necessarily believe it to be he wants to be a Yankee. That is the part that where the Yankee fan is now sensing blood in the water on how he's playing, the new lack of hustle issue, and we're going to get to that in a second, and his soundbite and how he's denying it. But now there's blood in the water about how this thing is turned. And the Yankee fan can sense now that even the Met fan can't deny what's going on here. But it's a far reach. And I know Michael Kay is reporting that people close to Juan Soto are saying that, these are the two reports today. Bob Clappish reporting that there is some concern inside the Mets organization that he's just not himself and there's a lack of enthusiasm about being a New York Met and being on this team. And that obviously he chose not to speak to the media after Sunday Night Baseball. He chose to not speak to the media during the game. He asked out of the interview process on the field with the ESPN Sunday Night broadcast last minute or 45 minutes before the broadcast. Then there were reports about a private jet that have been shut down. All of these stories circling Juan Soto. It's really remarkable, and this is why it bothers the Met fan, and I understand why. Forget whether or not he wants to be a Yankee and he's unhappy being a Met. We could read into that all day long, and I think that's a bunch of, we can't actually know that or believe that or be inside his head, but we can't deny what we're seeing. What we're seeing is, and now what we've seen with the play in the eighth inning on the check swing ground ball and not running it out, and without question, he didn't run it out. And then you turn into a game last night that the Red Sox take down the Mets 3-1. The offense continues to be a struggle. Kodai Senga starts the game as poorly as we have seen him start the game, and yet still is managing to give you, a representable start of 6 innings and 3 runs, but the Mets offense continues to be down. Obviously, Pete Alonso and his offense have started to cool off. His defense is now an issue after I put him in the first base Gold Glove category. He continues to have issues throwing the ball. He airmailed the play at the plate on the Sunday finale of the Subway Series. He obviously has another issue underhanding an easy ground ball to Kodai Senga in this game that leads to runs, or it doesn't lead to runs, but it's just another problem. You're seeing Brett Beatty playing third base. There's a real issue now with how Beatty's played third and the way Vientos has played third on that dynamic at third. But the defense isn't as good. The offense isn't as good. They've lost 5 out of their last 6, or 4 out of their last 5, rather. They've struggled here offensively. They're not scoring runs. 1 run against a lousy Red Sox team. And Juan Soto hitting into big double plays, hitting a ball that he thought was gone and Cadillacing it out of the box, and what he could have had a double. And instead, he was standing at first base. Now, he did end up stealing second base and making up for it. But all of this has now culminated into what we're obviously watching. Not the same Juan Soto. And we have seen it for a while. It's not brand new. It's been a couple weeks. But for me, the Subway Series and his inability to get up for that series spoke volumes. Right? I'm sorry. I expected it as a Yankee fan. You expected it as a Met fan or a Yankee fan. We all knew coming into the Bronx, into that environment where this guy thrives. This is who he is. He thrives in these kind of atmospheres. He's thrived in the postseason. He's, as a 20-year-old, thrived in the World Series against the Houston Astros team that's been the best team of the decade. A team that's won championships. Taking Verlander, who's dominated in a Houston uniform in the postseason, taking him deep. No Yankee's been able to do that. And there's Juan Soto at 20 years old doing it for the Washington Nationals. We saw it in a Yankee uniform last year. Every moment of the season, none of it looked like this. And now it was one thing when it was the Yankee fan who was butthurt. It was another thing when it was the Yankee fan who was trying to clutch at straws to try and save their season as they kind of struggled offensively, and Bellinger wasn't performing all that well to start the year, and they were up and down, and Devin Williams was blowing games, and the Mets were taking every series, and the Mets were winning despite Juan Soto not playing great, and Pete Alonso was putting up MVP numbers, and the New York Mets were out to the best record in Major League Baseball, and this was just, any talk of Juan Soto was premature, which was fair, and it was all about the Yankee fan crying and not acting like a Yankee fan. And even coming out of the Subway Series, the first couple days, the reaction to the crowd. Oh, it's the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen from a Yankee fan base. It's just, this is the once proud, look what's happened. This is your World Series. Congratulations on your World Series win, and all the nonsense that's going on. And how quickly, off of a couple of stories this morning, and whether or not we could take every one of them as gospel, of course not. I don't know. I'm sure Michael Kay has heard things, whether they're entirely accurate or not. He's not making up the fact of the things he's saying. I don't know if it's entirely true or how close the connections are, but I don't think Michael Kay would just flat out make it up out of thin air that he's heard that Juan Soto wanted to be a Yankee, but his family wanted him to be be a Met, so he chose the Mets. I can't tell you that's accurate. I don't know. I'm not going to go on it like it's the gospel, but I don't think he made it up. And Bob Klapisch talking about inside the organization, there's some thoughts about him being unhappy being a Met. And now you're seeing the lack of hustle. And what we've seen all year is him not be himself. There's no denying it anymore. And the transition of it just being about Yankee fans is now starting to turn ugly inside the Met fandom. There's no way around it. Because you're seeing it now. The manager's being asked about his lack of hustle. And lack of hustle. And I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how many home runs you hit. I don't care how dynamic of a shift just your mere appearance in the uniform has transformed an entire city. I don't care. The minute you start talking lack of hustle, especially when you make $765 million, I heard Boomer this morning talking about the idea that maybe he has a jet, or we're talking about hustling and the amount of money he makes. When it starts to get ugly and the fan base is now recognizing it, because you're a Met fan, you're a Yankee fan, I don't care who you are. You don't have to believe in the Bob Klapisch story, or at least every word of it. You could dismiss Michael Kay's report that he'd rather have been a Yankee, but his family convinced him otherwise because of suites and wardrobes or whatever else. You can dismiss it. You can dismiss any story you want. You can dismiss anything you'd like. You can't dismiss what we are all watching with our eyes. And the Subway Series crystallized it. The Subway Series crystallized it for a Met fan base that has been waiting for Juan Soto to be the driving force of their team, waiting for him to carry this group, waiting for him to look like the player we all saw last year. And that's what the dynamic is really interesting, because Yankee fan and Met fan alike, even if you're not like me and you do this for a living and you have to watch both teams, we saw Juan Soto play last year. You saw it, I saw it, Met fans saw it. It looked different than this. It looked different than this. They were talking about it on the Sunday night broadcast. Where is the Soto shuffle? Where is, and Bob Klapisch is talking about it in his story, where is the enthusiasm? Where is the fun? Juan Soto isn't having fun right now. And I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to be that guy, although I could play into it and have some fun with you. It is just sports. But I'm not going to tell you it's because he's desperate to be a Yankee and he misses being a Yankee. I don't know that to be true. I don't. Nor do you, nor do any Yankee fans. It could just be that he's struggling. It could just be the idea that not necessarily he's unhappy being a Met or wishes he was somewhere else. Just the idea for a guy who came up a young kid in the Nationals organization and knew and had an idea that it might not be his final his final place and his final destination. And clearly that wasn't the case with the Padres. And even last year was a one-year thing. He was always looking ahead to the next thing. And now just the idea of this is my place for 15 years and I just signed a $765 million and there's no next destination. I got to make it work here with this team. And that's what I'll be judged on for the rest of my life. Maybe that's it. Maybe I have no idea what's going on. Maybe he's got a personal issue inside his life that none of us know anything about. I don't know what it is, but what we are seeing is a different Juan Soto. It's inarguable. And now, when you start to have a fan base like the Mets who have been waiting for this and have still been fighting uphill, and now they've lost the Subway Series to the New York Yankees. Now the crowing can't be as loud. The turn of the city, the turn of Big Brother, Little Brother, whatever they were holding on to for a day or two after the Friday night, they were able to say, look at this embarrassing franchise's fan base. Look at what's going on they can't afford them, and now they're all crying, and they're turning their back. How corny, and they're booing him, and it's F. Juan Soto, and how embarrassing it is. And then suddenly he continues to not perform. He doesn't rise to the occasion. And now it's national reports. Now it's the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast telling you they recognize things. He's ducking us. He doesn't want to meet the moment. He didn't meet the moment in front of all of us in the biggest series of the city so far. He wasn't there. It's no longer just a Yankee narrative. It's right in our face. Stories are being written about it. And now the Met fan has something to latch onto of where the hell is the hustle? I'm paying you $765 million. We gave you everything you asked for. And now I got an unhappy, mopey guy who doesn't want to hustle. And that's when it turns ugly. Because it was easy to brush it aside while the Mets were winning. It was easy to brush it aside while the Yankees were struggling. Now the Yankees are playing good baseball. They won the series, and the Mets are struggling, and the offense is struggling, and Lindor is cooled off, and Alonso is cooled off, and all that is left is an underwhelming Juan Soto, who now is doing the cardinal sin. You can handle a struggle. You can handle a slump. You know eventually he's going to snap out of that. But now, first place is no longer where you are. You know, first place is not a guarantee or where you are currently sitting. You're watching the Phillies come back up. You're watching the Atlanta Braves, after an 0-7 start, come back up. You know how good the rest of the National League is. The offense is not scoring runs, and Juan Soto isn't running out ground balls. Juan Soto is hitting into double plays in big spots. Juan Soto is Cadillacing home runs that hit off the wall of the Green Monster. And now, when you start worrying about hustling, and you start talking about not wanting to be a Met, and you watch him moping around, and there are stories written, and you lost the Subway Series, now it's easy to turn on Juan Soto. And now Juan Soto is going to have his own fan base questioning what's going on. And he's in Washington, he's a beloved figure. Hit won a World Series championship after Bryce Harper, their other hero, left. I can't speak to San Diego as eloquently because he was out on the West Coast and we didn't watch it every day. He had a terrible time of it when he first got traded there. Then the second year they did go to the playoffs. And, ultimately he performed well in that playoff run in 22. Actually, the first year he was traded, they made the playoffs, and he relatively played well. But last year, it was nothing but roses from the Yankee fan. It was nothing but a happy Juan Soto. It was nothing but a extremely well-performing Juan Soto. And you know what? Here's a secret. There are probably moments where Juan Soto didn't run out a ground ball to New York Yankees. There was probably a sequence where Soto hit a long fly ball and didn't hustle out of the box because he thought he got it. But nobody cared because Juan Soto was hitting .320 with a 980 OPS, and he was dominating. But now he's struggling. Now we're questioning his motives. Now we're questioning his happiness. Now we're not seeing that fun-loving baseball player that wanted you to bring him here to change everything about your team and the feeling around the franchise. You're seeing a sad, moping Juan Soto who now isn't hustling, and then the manager openly says, yes, we need to talk about it. And after that, Juan Soto denies the idea that he's not hustling. And it's not an issue. And says, if you watch the game, you saw me play hard. No, Juan, we all saw you not hustle out of the box Sunday night against the Yankees. We all saw you pimp a home run that didn't go out against the monster where you always have to be worried that ball's not getting out. And now it starts to turn ugly. It went so quickly. It went so quickly from Friday night, a New York Yankee story. That's what it was. I heard Evan say it today. And the whole time, this is more about the Yankee fans and Juan Soto coming back to the Bronx and how the Yankee fans feel about it. I heard him say it today. As well as, call me a Brian Cashman stooge, which is fine. I heard him say it today. That, hey, this was the first time it felt like more of a Yankee Subway Series. It was more important to them. And the Soto thing was more important to the Yankees. Well, very quickly, it went from every Met fan being able to dog every Yankee fan and how they behaved and how sad it is and how embarrassing it is that they're so scorned over this one player and able to hold it over the Yankee fans' head. It went so quickly into losing that series and now questioning his hustling and questioning his desire, and there's stories being written about it, and the ESPN broadcast is unhappy with him because he chose not to do their interview, and now Michael Kay is reporting whatever Michael Kay is reporting, that he wanted to be a Met, he wanted to be a Yankee, but his family said otherwise, and all these stories wrapped into one, and the Mets are losing. He's not performing. He's in, particularly right now, the throes of maybe his worst stretch of the season. He hit into a big double play last night. He's not hustling. They're not winning. They're not scoring runs. And now the question of all of that is being asked of him in every post game, and it's going to haunt him, and he's going to have to deal with things he's never had to deal with before. There's questions of the Yankees and his relationship with Aaron Judge, and his questions about the fan base and his reaction in that building, and his 1-for-10 performance and his not hustling. Suddenly there's a ton of questions in the New York media, and he's not used to it. And how quickly this has become an issue for the Mets. It was a Yankee thing on Friday. Mets coming off winning the series against the Pirates. It was an ugly final game of the series, but they're coming off playing relatively well. They're in first place. They just beat the Pirates. Yankee fans are the real embarrassment of this whole thing. No biggie. They win the game on Saturday. No biggie. Juan Soto steals a base, gets the third, is the, go-ahead run earlier in the game. No biggie. Then he has some terrible at-bats Sunday night. Then he dodges the media. Then he doesn't stick around to answer questions after the game. Then he doesn't hustle on a ground ball. Then he goes into Boston and pulls the same crap. Now it's a Met issue. Now it's a Juan Soto playing baseball issue. Now the Mets are losing and it's an issue. Now the offense doesn't score runs and it's an issue. Now it's something different. Now it's not just fun and games. Now it's not just, this is just a bunch of BS. Now this is the Met fan concerned about what they're seeing, the manager saying one thing, Soto saying another thing. All of us watching his unhappiness on the field. This quickly becomes something different, something Juan Soto hasn't had to handle yet. And quite honestly, he hasn't handled whatever he's had to handle as a Met yet that good, and it hasn't even been that tough. Now it gets tough, and we'll see how he responds. I fully expect him to be a great baseball player. That's what he is. But right now, this Soto thing is turning ugly. It's getting there. And the Met fan is going to get tired of this. And it is easy. Like I heard the morning show talking about, it is easy to start getting angry at a player who makes $765 million. We have seen it a bunch. It is easy to get really frustrated, and especially when you are bringing in hustle into the situation. This is an interesting dynamic right now that Juan Soto finds himself in, the Met fan finds himself in. Now, look, it's May. The Mets are still a winning franchise. The Mets are still very good. But this is now no longer just a downtrodden, sad, angry, bitter, scorned lover Yankee fan base. This is now a Met fan base wondering what the hell they got for $765 million and why this guy can't run out ground balls. That's something different entirely.